Hello folks, welcome back to my world of stuff. Yeah, as you can see, it's another beautiful, glorious autumnal day in the UK. Although I don't think it's actually autumn yet, is it? Not until the clocks go back in about 2 weeks' time, I think. Not the fag end of summer, a little bit just after that. Anyway, it's pouring down with rain, it's chucking it down. I'm off to the cinema. The plan was today to do a double bill. I was going to see Shaun of the Dead on its 20th anniversary re-release run, but I haven't done that. I bottled out of that, although it didn't stop me recording a video about it, which you'll see is on the channel, or will be on the channel. And Folie, Deux, Joker 2, in other words, which I am going to go and see. I'm going to make the effort to go and see it, despite the torrential weather, which really makes me wish I was staying indoors. But there we are. Be bold, be brave. I'm off to see a Joker Folie, Deux, so I shall probably grab a snack on the way, and then I'll see you in the cinema room, well, after this little lot. Cheers. Hello there, my name is Paul Mount. Welcome to my world of stuff. First of all, a big thank you to all the new subscribers who've come aboard in the last week or so. Well over 100 of you. Wow. Please stick around. Hope you do. I know it's the Tripods video that's drawn you in, but there's loads of cult entertainment to come, retro entertainment, new film reviews, all sorts of stuff. So a bit of a potpourri, if you will, of cult entertainment here on my world of stuff. So hope you stick around. And if you are new here and you've just tuned in to see what I've got to say about Joker Folie, Deux, please subscribe and like and leave a comment. Come on, we're all family. Thank you. Welcome back. It's now Wednesday early afternoon, and there's a reason this video is a little bit late. As I said in the intro, I was going to see Joker Folie, Deux. I will stop saying it like that, I promise, on Sunday afternoon, and I plan to get back in the evening, record my video, edit it, get it up the next day. I duly did this. I recorded the video, but I did it using my lapel mic, which you might have seen on my Shaun of the Dead video, which I think gave a slightly sharper, crisper quality to the audio. And even though when I was recording it, it came up on the screen, recording via external microphone, when I played the first recording back, there was no sound, just a sort of a rush of sort of static. That was slightly annoying, but undeterred, I carried on and recorded it again, and much the same happened. So for now, I have dumped the lapel microphone, and I'm just using the phone microphone again, so bear with. And in fact, it's probably a good thing that I'm recording it for a third time, because when I did the recordings on Sunday, I was a bit annoyed. I was a bit unhappy. I was a bit angry, because I absolutely loved Joker Folie, Deux. I will say that before we go any further. I thought it was an absolutely splendid, magnificent, clever film. And I was very frustrated, and remain very frustrated, by all the negativity towards it, the critical negativity, the online negativity. I mean, a lot of it we know is clickbait for people jumping on a bandwagon of raging about Joker Folie, Deux and why they didn't like it, why they hated it, because it's an easy way to get attention. And it's quite possible that this video, where I boast about liking the film, won't get so much attention because it doesn't follow the narrative. And I think it is interesting that the critics, the media critics, have been a bit more kindly towards this film. I think they got it. I think the problem with a lot of the clickbait people, and a lot of people out there, and you may be one of them, and I'm not casting any shade on you for that, a lot of people have misunderstood this film. They've misunderstood the original Joker as well, from 2019. That was, of course, Todd Phillips' film, which introduced us to Arthur Fleck, played by Joaquin Phoenix, who was introduced as this desperately sad, desperately disturbed loner who lived in a strange fantasy world. He wanted to be a stand-up comic, and eventually the circumstances of his life tipped him over the edge. People didn't respect him, people pilloried him, people took the mickey out of him, and eventually it turned him, and he, based on his would-be comedian persona, adopted the persona of a Joker. Not necessarily the Joker, I'll come to that in a moment. White face, clown makeup, where he committed terrible acts of murder against people who had wronged him, but not as Arthur Fleck, as Joker, this character he had created. That's what the first film was, of course. It was a massive hit, pulled in over $1 billion at the box office. And like most people, I was a little bit concerned when I heard that there was a sequel coming, because it seemed of a piece. It seemed a complete story about this man, this madman, and how he caused this insurrection. I mean, that's an interesting part of the film, how he inflamed the people of Gotham City, who regarded him as a champion, as a hero, standing up for the everyman, standing up for the underdog. by doing terrible things. And I know there's a lot of criticism at the time about that message in the film. So when the sequel was announced, I, along with a lot of people, was scratching my chin thinking, do we need that? I mean, that was a story in itself. We don't need another film. And when it was announced then that Lady Gaga had been cast as Lee Quinzel, Harley Quinn from the comic books, and it was going to be a musical, opinions seemed to go two ways. Now, first of all, I think the problem that the film has had, whether through its own making or people's own perceptions, I think they thought, musical, crap, not interested. They've let us down, and it's the usual, we haven't given the fans what they wanted, they're turning their backs on the fans, and all that sort of nonsense that entitled genre fans always come up with. And I think the presence of Lady Gaga as Lee Quinzel led people to believe that this was going to go down a road it was never going to go down. I think a lot of people watching this film thought that it was going to carry on the origins of the Joker and how he would now team up with Harley Quinn, Lee Quinzel, who is in the comics the Joker's criminal partner and soulmate, and how they would then become criminal geniuses terrorizing Gotham on this raging tornado of crime. But that was never going to happen. And when you see this film, you realise why that's never going to happen, because this isn't that Joker and this isn't that Harley Quinn. These are two characters who use the names and the iconography of those comic strip characters, but Todd Phillips has very cleverly put them into different characters. I know it's all set in Gotham, we've got Arkham Asylum, we've got all those markers towards the Batman comic strips, the DC comic strips, and I know Todd Phillips himself has said this is his entry into the DC universe, but it's not the Joker and it's not Harley Quinn as we've seen them before. If you think of the Harley Quinn we've seen in Suicide Squad films, for example, played by Margot Robbie, that is the Harley Quinn of the comics, this maniac, this crazed psychopath who is Joker's female flip side. But this isn't that. This uses those ideas, but creates a completely different version of them. So they're not the comic strip characters, although they present the personas of them. And I think I can understand why people might be confused and even frustrated by that, because they wanted the comic strip characters. They wanted to see Joker complete his transformation. But this is totally the opposite of that. And I'm trying to avoid any spoilers here for those of you who haven't seen it. And I would encourage you to go and see it. Set aside your preconceptions if you've avoided it because of all the crap you've heard about it, because it's not what people are saying. What it is, though, is the second half of the story. And I've written a review of it for StarburstMagazine.com. You can find it at Starburst. And I'll repeat here what I said there. This is like the second part of a two-piece jigsaw. When you put the two together, it tells a story. And you realise that the first film was half the story. And this now is the second half of the story that completes the story and brings the story full circle. Arthur is in prison. It's 2 years after the events of the first film. He's awaiting trial for the murders in the first film. And obviously Gotham's courts are considerably more clogged up than even those in England if you've got to wait 2 years for trial. But he's being beaten and bullied and disrespected by everybody in Arkham Asylum, particularly the guards. One guard, Jackie Sullivan, I think his name is, played by Brendan Gleeson, is particularly malevolent towards him and is bullying him and just mistreating him generally. But Arthur's just wandering through prison life, keeping his head down and surviving. And then he catches the eye of Lee Quinzel, who is an inpatient at the hospital. She's played by Lady Gaga, and they seem to have a bit of a spark, and she's sort of fascinated by him. He becomes fascinated and obsessed by her. Eventually she leaves Arkham because, as she explains to Arthur, they think that he's a bad influence on her. She isn't the Harley Quinn of the comics. She isn't the lunatic of the comics. But she is very manipulative and very duplicitous, and her agenda isn't what it seems to be when we meet her and she joins up with Arthur. Eventually Arthur goes to trial. The trial scenes are absolutely fantastic. I mean, I'm always wary of trial scenes and things set in courtrooms, because I used to work in the judicial system, and I always get frustrated at seeing, particularly in Britain, courtroom dramas that dispense with a lot of the procedure and the protocol to get to the drama. I understand why they have to do that, because trust me, court proceedings are quite dull. There's certain things that happen that you don't want to see dramatised, but they do tend to cut corners. And even though I'm not working in that area anymore, I remember enough of it to wince when certain things happen that wouldn't happen in a courtroom setting. That may well be the case here, because it's a very wild and unconventional courtroom scene, or courtroom scenes in fact, but it is scintillatingly done. I mean, I will say once again, Joaquin Phoenix's performance throughout the film as Arthur is astonishing, terrifying, and heartbreaking. You really feel some sympathy for this man now, who, as the film progresses, is coming to terms not only with himself, but with his alter ego, his Joker. And he understands where Joker is in his life towards the end of the film. And that, again, takes the film into directions that have angered fans and frustrated a lot of people who didn't want to see this happen to the Joker. But again, as I say, they haven't appreciated it's not their Joker. It's not the Joker of Michael Keaton films or the Christian Bale films. It's not that Joker. It's something very different, using those stereotypes from the comics. I don't think the film did itself very many favours when it sort of publicised as a musical. If it's a musical, it's a jukebox musical. It's not one of those musicals, and I find them a bit exasperating, where people suddenly burst into song and there's music all around them and they sing and dance and then go back about their businesses. I always find that, as a person who likes fantasy films and genre films, I just find that hard to suspend my disbelief. But when I was younger, I liked Sound of Music and Carousel and West Side Story, of course, one of the classics. But these days, I don't embrace the new musicals, but I like The Greatest Showman. There are one or two that I've watched and quite enjoyed. It's not a cinematic genre that I gravitate towards. But this isn't a musical in that sense. It's a jukebox musical where there are songs, classic songs. They're not new songs. They're old songs, songs by the Carpenters, songs by Jacques Brel, songs by Stevie Wonder. And those songs are used as illusions in Arthur's fractured, disjointed, psychotic mind. As things happen in his life, he creates scenarios that reflect what's happening and what he wants to happen, whether it's as Arthur or as Joker. And they're wonderfully staged scenes. They're not massively elaborate song and dance sequences. Some of them are quite intimate pieces. I think the best one for me is The Joker Is Me, which takes place in the courtroom, which is thrillingly done. So that's the sort of musical element. So it isn't a musical, but it used music in a dramatic context. I think people have got their undercrackers in a twist. It's a musical, but it is not a musical. Really, it isn't a musical. It has music in it. And if anything, I would stretch the point and say it's a jukebox musical. But even then, I think the musical element, I think it does it a disservice. It's a drama with some musical interludes to underline what's happening in the story. Those then are the things which I think have confounded a lot of the audience. And they have not been able to focus on what the film is. They're more focused on what it isn't. It isn't what they thought it was going to be. It isn't what they wanted it to be. It isn't a comic book movie. And I know it's a hard one to get your head around and to come to terms with, because it's called Joker and it's set in Gotham and it's got all that stuff that reminds us of the comic strips, but it really isn't that Joker. It's a different riff on the name Joker and the character and idea of the Joker on a modern, disjointed, disturbed man. And this second part of the film, as I said, it does feel like second piece in the jigsaw, because when you've seen the second film, you realise that the first one wasn't finished. And I suppose even if you were thinking of a sequel, you would think, well, what's going to happen in the sequel? Joker's in prison, or Arthur's in prison, I should say. Where does the story go? And this is why I understand why people thought he was going to meet Harley Quinzel and they were going to escape and form this criminal mastermind syndicate that would bring Gotham to his knees. But no, this isn't what the film does at all, and there's no indication that it was ever going to do that. And I don't think Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix would want to do that, because these films ultimately are about this man, this fractured, tortured, disturbed psyche, and how his situation progresses from when he starts on the criminal path to him moving through the criminal procedure and what happens after that. And again, I'm not going to spoil what happens after that, but I thought it was a magnificent film. And people have said it's long and it drags. It is. It's 2 hours, 20 minutes. But from the moment it started to the moment it ended, I was just enraptured. I was gripped. I didn't find it boring because it's a character piece. And I know people are so used to wham, bam, explosive action scenes and snipey dialogue. But this is very much a character piece about a man on a downward path, a man who is possessed of some strange inner demon that he can't shake off. Or can he? It's terrific, as I said. Joaquin Phoenix deserves another Oscar nod, regardless of box office, and I'll talk about that in a moment. It's very unusual, I know, for an actor to get another Oscar nomination from a part that they've already won an award for, but his performance is just outstanding. The nuances, the facial expressions, you can actually see him as Arthur Fleck, and you can see the Joker persona there as well, struggling to get out, struggling to dominate. Magnificent performance. Lady Gaga too, I've never seen her act doing anything, because films like House of Gucci and Star is Born aren't those things I gravitate towards. But I've not heard anything particularly complimentary about her acting, but she was stunning in this. She really captured this particular version of Lee Quinzel, which isn't the one from the comics. It's a version of that which will surprise people a lot. She brings a lot into the film. Kudos also to Brendan Gleeson. I've heard a lot of people say he's hardly in it. He's in it a lot as this sadistic guard who detests Arthur, and there's one very disturbing sequence which can be interpreted in several ways, but let's just say that Arthur doesn't come out of it very well. It's a beautiful film. I'm going to say it's a masterpiece, and I know that people will hoot and howl and scream, possibly unsubscribe and leave abusive comments, but it's just my interpretation of it. I think I understood the film, and I think the problem is a lot of people haven't. And I'm not saying that as I'm better than anybody else. And oh, look at me, I've understood this film. I'm just saying that it worked for me, and I got what it was doing. And I got what it was doing because I didn't want it or think it would do anything else. I didn't think it was going to be the Joker becoming the supervillain. That was never the intention. It was never what Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix wanted to do. They wanted to tell the rest of this story, and that's exactly what they've done. So I am frustrated by the negativity, and I would encourage you, if you've seen it and didn't like it, try it again. Bear in mind what I've said about it. Hopefully that might help. And again, it's hard. I'm trying not to sound pompous and pretentious like I'm a film critic, I know more than you. It's just that I got this film in ways that perhaps people didn't. And I think that perhaps people didn't because they wanted something else that this film was never going to be. I just think it's a real triumph. It is my film of the year, and that will shock and probably annoy a lot of people, because a lot of people out there are just dismissing it as crap all over the place. And I didn't think it was all over the place. I've seen a lot of people say, oh, it's so disjointed, but it's only disjointed to the extent that Arthur is a disjointed character. His life is all over the place. And the story, I don't think, is particularly all over the place. It progresses along, him in prison, him meeting Lee, the trial, and the aftermath of the trial. And the whole film is the aftermath of the first film. There's so much in it, really, that it's sort of in my head. And I'm thinking about how clever it is and how things connect and how things develop. And it's unfortunate a lot of people have missed that because of their anger at it being something that they didn't want. And sometimes you have to set aside what you want and look at what's best for the characters and the story. And I think that Folie, Deux delivers absolutely everything that you could want from these characters if you understand what they're doing with these characters, which isn't just saying, it's the Joker, it's Harley Quinn, they're mad, crazy criminals. No, they're not. They're disturbed people. So anyway, that's Folie, Deux. If I had any criticism of it, and it's a very small criticism, I would say there is a sequence with Steve Coogan, who plays a sort of a TV interviewer who goes into Arkham Asylum to talk to Arthur before his trial begins, try to get into his head and discover the true Arthur. And Arthur goes along with this, and he tries to explain that he's not the person who committed these crimes, he's changed, but we know that the Joker persona is still in there. And that scene just took me out of the film slightly because it's Steve Coogan. I love Steve Coogan. I think he's genius. I love all the stuff he does. Obviously, Alan Partridge is a comedy icon. But there is now always an element of Alan Partridge in all his performances. And I think knowing that he's Alan Partridge, hearing his voice, it just, you watch it and you don't think of the character he's playing. Or certainly for me, I just felt, it's Alan Partridge. It's Steve Coogan. That is such a minor criticism of the film. It's not even a criticism, it's more an observation. There's the one moment where I was yanked out of the story and pulled back into the real world of watching an actor playing a part and playing it very well. So anyway, that's my thoughts on Folie, Deux. Please don't hate me if you didn't like the film, because all art is subjective, film is subjective, we all have different opinions on things, we all like certain things. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And if you didn't like the film for whatever reason, if you didn't like it because it wasn't what you wanted it to be, I understand that, but try to look at it from a different perspective and try to look at it from the perspective of what they did do rather than what they didn't do. And the fact that they didn't just make a film about the Joker for the comics. They made a film about a man with a split personality, himself, and this character he's created for himself, this comedian he wanted to be. And I think you get a lot more from it. But as I say, I understand if people don't want to do that, if people have dismissed it, that's entirely your right. But it's a shame because this film, trust me, is a hell of a lot better than a lot of the online critics have said, and I hope it's a film that will start to be appreciated when people sit back and think about it. Talking about the box office, I mean, there's so much fuss about it's flopped, it's a disaster, it's this, it's that. Yeah, the film cost $200 million to make, whereas I think the first one cost $85 million and went on to make over $1 billion. This isn't going to get anywhere near that, but at the moment, worldwide, it's on about $120 million. It needs to make between 400 and 500 million to turn a profit. I hope it does. I hope that over the weeks it will show legs, and I hope that people will give it a go. But to do that, they will have to consider that it isn't the film that they might have expected and might have wanted, and just try it. And I think that if you can set aside your expectations, you will enjoy this film. And I do hope that people will go and see it, and I hope that the box office will stay buoyant for a little bit, because I'd like to see the film. It's not going to make $1 billion, but I would like to see it break even and turn a profit, if only to, stick a finger up to the online clickbait critics who are just hating it because of clickbait. Anyway, that's enough from me, I think, on the question of the Folie. Deux. I'm sorry, I didn't stop saying it like that. I love the film. I'm going to give it 10 out of 10. And again, I've said before, it's hard to give anything 10 out of 10. But I've done it to Shaun of the Dead, and I've done it to this, so sue me. It's in cinemas now, and I would urge you to see it. Whether you think you won't like it or not, I think you will. Right, thank you for watching. As I said, thank you for everybody who watches this channel. Please stick around, even if you didn't like Folie Deux. Don't unsubscribe, because it's just one film. It's just my opinion. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. I will see you again very soon. Until I do, you keep taking the stuff.